Hello. Good morning, everybody. Hello. Good to see you. Excellent, excellent. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you for joining. And welcome. Today, it's going to be again AI. I'm kind of making this kind of all about AI on Friday, but it's going to be different AI, something that actually, like, it's a completely different way how to use AI, and I think it's really interesting from that perspective, like, because um so very often, like, we kind of end up a little bit trapped by thinking what possibilities of AI are, like thinking, oh, it's just a kind of, generating, a lot of images or something like that. But actually, there are some aspects of AI that can be used to help us in other way. And this project that I'm going to be sharing with you today has, like, I have been doing this, research on film emulation probably for as long as I was, working as a colorist. It's fair to say that, because that was that I somehow ended up in a situation that it was very beneficial for my career and for my business in London. That I used to have to be very good in film emulation. I made a name and a reputation that I can do very good film emulation. So I was naturally kind of encouraged to continue doing it. And then once I moved to Los Angeles, I really got access to people who have invented um, the whole kind of film post processing. Even met people who were working for Kodak. I did a lot of research. I did a lot of interviews with people who are very influential in this whole area, and I have learned so much. And it's actually, for me, almost, this project is as much about understanding how film works, as well as about preservation of this wonderful knowledge that we have about human visual cortex and system, and how we see, and why aesthetically we like film. I don't think I'm going to be able to go too deep into this particular hour that I have here for you today. Into that, that's a completely different conversation. But in any case, my research was always ongoing, and we came to a point where we were able to kind of understand that there is more to film emulation than just color. We knew that we had the scientific evidence that just applying a film LUT is not film emulation, and then applying some sort of grain is kind of okay, but it's still not film emulation. And then applying some kind of halation plugin, yes, it's still close, but it's not emulation. And like once you get on the top level, they call it the 1% improvement. Like then you really start noticing a lot of small details, small differences that are actually really visible. And um, and this project did at some moment grind to a halt. We knew, that we are technically limited to what we are able to achieve digitally and compare how film looks. And I haven't never given up on it. I just knew that there's going to be at one moment a breakthrough. And this breakthrough happened when I realized that we could use AI in its absolutely basic form, which is to compare two images and to let us understand what's happening. And then once we have started doing that, then that really kind of has given us the idea to what's happening. And then I'm going to show you basically how this whole kind of thing happened. And then what we have today is this set of plugins called FilmLab AI. As you're aware of it, FilmLab AI is not available on the open market, but we are opening applications for it. If you train with us, or if you're a professional colorist, you will be able to obtain it. And existing customers are getting ColorLab AI first, those who have ColorLab AI Pro. And then we are already opened ColorLab AI, sorry, FilmLab AI to some really big color grading facilities. And now we're opening it also to freelance colorists, smaller facilities as well, so on. So we, as probably I'm recording this, there's at least probably like 2 or 3 new companies getting on board. every day. So, that's a kind of the speed of adoption that we have right now. So, just understand it's not something that you're going to be able to watch this video and go to our website and buy it. It doesn't work like that, but it doesn't matter. I think still it's wonderful for you to understand it. And if you're interested in it at one moment, I'm sure there's going to be an opportunity to how we're going to be able to give you access to it. Okay, so I'm going to start now with just a little explanation, the background, story to really what's happening, so that you understand that, and how this whole thing worked really. What I'm basically going to do for you now, guys, is I'm going to basically go and show you, kind of an overview of the process that we did. So first, where we started, what we did first was we took some test material, digitally created. I mean, this is just an example. This is a test image we used, but we actually generated specific images. I can't share them with you, but think about it. There are specific types of patterns and gradients that allow us to do analysis of those images, and then so help us understand what is happening with them effectively, right? So this is one of the images that we used as well. So basically, it's like a kind of just a, you all know it is a bell, and it's just a log C. And then what we did is we took that kind of digital, images, right? And we have sent them to be printed by using array laser to a film negative. Okay, this is particularly unusual. So just so you know, because normally we always print on film print stock, but actually there are companies that are able to print to a negative. And the reason why this is tricky is because negative is more light sensitive. So this whole printing, but as I said, there are companies that are well versed in it. They are doing it. So we have worked with them to basically create. So what we effectively did is we pretended that this material was captured on negative, basically the standard, Kodak film stocks, 5219 and 2398. Okay, so then what we did is then we took that negative and used basically kind of the same process, that films that get finished photochemically do, where basically this negative goes through an optical printer and gets transferred to a film print for actual release, okay? And then we took that printed film and we scanned it. And this is also quite unusual because normally you scan film negative, right? But there is a way, again, how to get a reasonably good quality digital scan of a print as well, okay? And with that, basically, so what we had is then we had the whole round trip, right? So we basically, and then this is the image that we got back. So it's this absolutely beautiful, in the most pristine quality, 4K material that started digitally, but end up, going through the whole analog film processing. That means being captured on film negative, optically transferred to film print, scanned and being sent back to us. Okay. And so we had these beautiful images that came back to us that were equivalent to how these images would have looked if we had captured them using film camera effectively. But the beautiful thing and reason why we did it is because now what we had is we had a original source, which in AI terms is called ground truth. And if you, in any terms of AI development, any terms of building neural networks training, the ground truth is your absolute most important thing, because you can train neural network to do anything as long as you know what is your ground truth, right? And it's actually not really difficult to do it if you know what is ground truth, right? So basically, we have a ground truth. We know what's the starting point. We know what originally this image looked like. And then we had the outcome, which is basically this image on the right. And then the process was to develop, custom networks that were, and thank God did this whole development of this visual development of this computer vision networks. And you know what, they're not all deep neural networks, I'll be honest with you. you know you can do a lot with the machine learning, with just a simple computer vision networks, like because what we really wanted to do is we wanted AI to give us an analysis and tell us what happened with these pixels. Can you tell us what every pixel did? What did every pixel do to, how did this pixel change? So what was the starting point and what was the outcome? Okay, so basically what we did then is we said, okay, this is our digital master and this is our 4K scan after print. And can you please compare it, okay, and calculate the difference between the two? And then once you calculate the difference between the two, apply the difference back to the digital master. And that's what he basically did. So it created a set of modifications to every pixel. And when we actually, analyzed those modifications applied to the digital master, we had a very close match. Actually, pretty close. I mean, we could say, oh my God, this is looking very good. Okay. There is, however, a limitation when working in this method. And the limitation is actual resolution, because the neural networks cannot really work in such a high resolution. So we had to scale down the resolution for the analysis, but that was not really important to us because we never wanted to use neural network to generate actual images. These images we were able to generate in a resolution that was just under HD, but still we were able to understand that yes, the neural network has got such a high precision that it can generate images that are resembling perfectly well, something that happens on film. Okay, so for us it was really more, let's do analysis, let's do what happens. And then with a little bit of math, we said, okay, now that we know what the difference is, now that we understand this is ground truth, this is film, and this is the mathematical difference. Now let's work just with that difference. And then what we did is we said, okay, extract color change out of this difference. And then once we extracted color change, then we subtracted color change from the rest of the change. And then we ended up having just a texture difference. Okay, I know it sounds a little bit convoluted, but basically what we wanted to do is wanted to say, don't just give me the difference. Give me the difference so that I can see what is only color, okay, and what is everything else. And we were interested in everything else because we knew that we could do color. We were doing color for many years, right? I mean, the film LUTs were, that's what they're for, right? But that's was not what I wanted. I wanted to know everything else. So how did we did it? But simply by subtracting color out of the total change. And that left us only the texture. Okay. And this is basically what it is. So here I had like a ARRI, this is now with the log C transform, just a standard ARRI log C transform. And this is our scanned version that came back, right? The original film scan. Okay. And then what I did is I said, now just use the texture. Don't do anything with color. And this is the result of that. And that was fascinating. Because the moment we applied texture only, we realized how close we are actually to the total final film emulation look. We realized, well, actually, it's not about color at all. I mean, it is, of course, but I think when we modify color, what we do is we trick our eye in believing that this is looking same because the colors look the same. But look, if I don't do anything with color, if I only match texture, I actually feel that we get better result. I feel like this is more looking like film emulation than what we had previously, right? And not just that. And I was thinking, well, this is actually wonderful because I know ever since I worked with Vittorio Storaro that cinematographers are not really interested in making one-to-one copy of film. That's not really what they're after. They want to use the aesthetic on film as the visual language in their storytelling, but they don't necessarily want to imitate. They want to use something potentially even better than film. They want to use this element. They want to have a freedom to use the elements of aesthetic of film in their work as a part of their visual language. So it's not about, hey, I can just emulate this film print, because in reality we know if we had sent the same test just to another laboratory, the results would have been different. So there is no such a thing as absolute film emulation matching or absolutely accurate film emulation matching, because it's only absolutely accurate for that particular test we're working on. But if we were to perform the test tomorrow with someone else, or even with the same laboratory sometimes, right, we stand a great chance of getting different results. So our absolute matching would never work. So it was never really North Star for us, was never let's go and create an absolute match. The North Star for us was always, let's develop a tool that will allow us to take the elements of the visual language of film and make them accessible to the creator, to the creative people, right? And that's basically, that was the kind of the opening kind of thing where we went like, okay, now we know what we need to create. Now we understand what is the texture. And then we went and basically, instead of creating you have to also understand to now digitally emulate this texture, because that was the only thing that we needed to do, because we knew that the only way that this texture emulation is ever going to work is if it's, number one, real time, right? Colorists, cinematographers, they don't want to sit there, upload something to the cloud, potentially, especially not that. Wait for a computer to calculate some AI calculations, send it back. I mean, that's not the way how we work. We know this. It kills the creative prospect. I mean, this is like, forget it. No one's ever going to do that, right? It needs to be real time. You need to click on it and it needs to show you in 4K real time now, right? So we knew that that we need to develop shaders effectively, like, which is a similar, like, think about this. If you're developing a video game, you basically need this video game to look optically accurate and play back in real time on large 4K screen. So how you do it is there are certain tricks how gaming industry does it. So there's also certain tricks how in picture post production we do it as well. And basically the kind of mechanic for that is to develop shaders, right? Shaders are elements of image processing that can do certain parts, and to also have a more granular control of this effect, we had to develop multiple shaders that will then allow you to control multiple elements of the texture. And then the biggest issue we found is that we realized, well, all emulation happens in a series where it happens one process after another. And that's not how it happens in film. The moment a photon of light hits the film, all these changes, halation, diffusion, grain, everything happens at that particular moment in that particular second. It's not a chain reaction. It's not like one after another. It's not like a, halation, then grain, then whatever. No, it's like all of it happens, right? So we knew that we had to, do it in such a way. And there is a way how to do it in DaVinci. It's called parallel nodes. But then another problem was, our kind of, desire was always to make it in the best possible image quality. We were not making this, for iPhone footage. We were actually measuring everything on Alexa 35. And there was really no way, and there is no way. I'm sorry, guys, to say that, just so you know, like, I know that many of you love to grade in Alexa 35, in DaVinci Wide Gamut, or even ACES CCT. Well, here's the bad news. These color spaces don't have enough dynamic range for that camera. And, you're not really getting that roll off that they basically are allowing you to have. And now, especially, there is this absolutely gorgeous new, the 265. I mean, like, and if you really are planning, if you're really planning to color grade it camera, then I really hope you're not going to ruin it by grading it in ACCCT or DaVinci Wide Gamut, right? You need a really better color space than that. And there wasn't one. And also we needed a color space that's going to connect between the different parts of the image processing, right? Different nodes. And there wasn't one. So we went to Josh Pines and we said, Josh Pines, you have to figure out. And he said, I already did. He was like, oh, no, no, we have it, Dado. It's already done, you know? So basically, that is the reason why we did the JP Look 2. And I'm going to have another like a lecture just about JP Look 2. It's absolute marvel of engineering. But for the moment, what I really would like to do now is, if you allow me, I'm going to go and switch to DaVinci Resolve, and I'm just going to practically show you basically how you are able, to take advantage of just these texture tools. I really kind of will not. I'm going to do texture first before I do anything else, and then, we're going to basically understand, what these elements of this image are. Okay, so what I got here is just some material. I'm using Arri Log-C. I don't know whether this is shot with Arri camera, but I'm just going to use it like that. It's something from Shot. What's it called? ArtGrid. But what I'll do now is I'm gonna basically do it instead of using just a standard, look designer workflow. I'm gonna now use the FilmLab AI workflow so that you can also see, how you should be doing it, and also that you can understand the benefits of it. So as we learned, the most important thing for us is to establish an environment where we can actually successfully generate this texture at the level of precision and quality that is necessary to be created. And that means that we have to have a color space that has such a dynamic range. First of all, look, we could have, there is always a way that, it's done. For example, in visual effects industry, what they do is they use linear encoding, which is not limited by dynamic range. It's kind of, whatever you have, the linear is just going to give it to you. But linear encoding does not translate well, or I would say does not translate at all when you start doing any film emulation work, because the film doesn't work linear. Film works in log. Everything that happens on film, everything, including these textures. And that, also another thing you have to understand, we had measured, the material that came back to us was log material, right? So there was no way for us to translate mathematically, from some sort of log material that we've been analyzing into some linear, and to solve the problem of the large dynamic range. So we needed a log encoding that has a large dynamic range, right? And that was solved. That is basically fixed with this kind of tool, which is called inode. We're bringing an update to inode because we are opening JPlog 2. It's going to be publicly available color space, and you're going to be able also to create lookup tables that are using JPlog 2. But think about it, that this is a color space that is designed purposely for color grading. It has a mid gray at 400, which is exactly like film, which is exactly like, log C, around 400. They're all like that, right? So it's not as low as DaVinci White Gamut, or even lower like Arilog C4, right? Which is always the biggest issue for us. We could have just said, let's do Arilog C4, but the problem with that color space was that it has such a low mid-gray, which makes your lift gamma gain behave in a really odd way. It's like as if you're driving a car on ice a little bit, like you were just never really able to kind of quite get that in. And that was the main complaint why, I personally didn't like it. And many colorists, that I spoke to, who were working, with RE35, they have not been using it because they were like, it's just really difficult to grade in that color space, right? So we knew that we had to change it. Another thing that JP Look 2 has got is it has basically ultimately every stop of exposure has got the same code value. Why is this important? Well, it's important because if you use offset, it's going to behave like linear gain. So basically, you have a true exposure change without you having to change any linearity. As I said, if you are really trying to emulate film, work in film, you got to stay out of the linear, because there is nothing really, these are two worlds that don't really coincide very well. Okay, so basically the inode, it allows you to convert from any camera you have into JPEG 2. That's the limit. That's all you can do with it. Well, it's quite a lot, right? But anyway, and then what you do is you then have like a sandwich, right? Where you're going to put this texture and this image processing inside. And what I normally recommend is if you're using any camera that's not Alexa 35, um, or maybe even Sony Venice, like maybe that could be Sony Venice 2, that could be another camera that could benefit. You want to use FilmLab AI as a kind of, just a part of your image processing that is sandwiched between inode and onode, and you can grade it in any color space you want. You can use in DaVinci Wide Gamma simply because those cameras don't have the dynamic range. So grading in the color space that you normally use to grade is absolutely fine. But when you're generating these emulation effects, you have to be in JPEG 2. So that's why we build inode and onode, because it brackets basically that part of your color grading pipeline to allow you to make these effects in a very high dynamic range. And then we will gracefully tone map it back to the color space of your choice. Okay. So for example, what I'm going to do, just to kind of, as an example, I'm going to just basically put an O node here, right? And this O node, I'm going to say, well, can you please export it as a scene? And I want this to go out as, let's say, ARRI log C4. Why not, right? And then I'm going to go and put my ODT to be a 3D LUT from ARRI. And I want this 3D LUT to be basically the ARRI log C. No, I want to set ARRI log C4, gamma 2.4, basically Rec 709. So this is the reveal color science. By the way, you can do exactly the same thing here when you just go into the SDR and you select here Arilog C4. You can do exactly the same thing, but for purposes of demonstration, for purposes of me helping you understand how you are, how you are utilizing these FilmLab AI tools in your current workflow, I'm just going to do this, that I'm basically sandwiching them between, your grading space and whatever output space you want to have. And look, because you're going in a bigger space, because you're going from smaller space to bigger space, there is no limitation. If you would work in ACES, you can go ACES. If you work in DaVinci Resolve Gamma, you can go DaVinci Resolve Gamma. There is no limitation. There is no limitation because we are not limited. We are not limiting your grading space in any way. It's in opposite. We are expanding it to generate this beautiful, detail, and then we're gonna tone map it back down. Okay, so that's a really important. You have a huge freedom here as well to kind of, through the JPEG 2 to explore different color management options as well in the same project, right? You're not limited to say, I have to grade in ACES the whole project. You don't have to do anything, to be honest. You're flexible. You can change and you can color grade in however you want. That is always something that I appreciated. I sometimes, let's say, I have to deliver in ACCCT, but I don't want all my color pipeline to be in ACCCT because I have certain tools that don't behave like that and so on. So, right. So basically, you have with IO another level of flexibility. Okay, so now in between these basically two nodes, right, which is my I node and O node, I have now created an environment that is in a like a 2 stops above DaVinci Wide Gamut and 1 stop above Arilog C4. And that little bit extra detail is very important because, as you will see, like all this emulation, of diffusion, of, halation, it's introducing highlight detail that's actually not there. If you understand, that never really existed. Camera never captured it. Digital sensor never had it. And then I'm introducing it. That means that it's going to be higher than your original source. So I need that headroom. And another huge advantage of it is when if you ever ask yourself, why did Ari spend so much time and effort to create a camera that's going to give me just some little bit specular highlight detail that, why is this really important? I always ask myself, until I didn't go and see the camera and see the results. And then I understood, yes, it's true that specular highlight that Ari is giving you extra is probably less than 0.1% of your whole image. But to our perception, to our eye, it plays an incredible role to perceive images just looking richer, nicer, more natural, right? And even though you're not making anything brighter, you don't really capture anything with more exposure just because you have more latitude in a highlight. That's not what's happening. But that roll off of the highlight that now has extra stops of dynamic range to roll it off more gracefully looks just very pleasant, very nice. And you know, this is probably something that happens on a very subliminal subconscious level, but you know, subjectively, people look at that image and they say it looks better. And this process, especially this week, you know, I had in our master's class, students, you know, compared in the same shots and using different emulation methods, and it was incredible to see the, you know, quality of an output of just a standard, you know, DaVinci kind of film emulation profiles, and the profile that's using this high dynamic range, which is really what FilmLab AI is really doing, and just the quality of skin rendering, of highlight rendering. It was just, you know, everything just, and we were like, I can't believe this is looking so different, you know. So you have to understand the fight for those extra stops of dynamic range in a highlight is real and it's necessary, and it's important. It's not a fad. It's not a marketing thing to say buy my camera because it has more stops of dynamic range. No, you will get an image that is just more pleasing to the eye. Okay, so now I'm going to go and say, all right, first thing I'm going to do in terms of the processing pipeline is another thing that we've been asked a lot in the past. And you know, there is a whole fight out there for like a vintage lenses or anamorphic lenses. I mean, it's unbelievable how much people are, you know, how much people love these old lenses, and they are rehousing lenses. And you know, I mean, like, you know, literally, if you rent like an anamorphic from Panavision, you know, the moment you know, finish your shoot, there is somebody from Panavision standing next to the camera, grabbing that lens and taking it to the next set. You know, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, this is the, you know, like, it's crazy how much cinematographers value good glass. And for the rest of us who don't have access to good glass on every shoot, which is 98% of the humanity, um, we thought, like, let's give us some way to help improve, you know, on this particular, you know, kind of subject. So what we did is we basically created a lens simulation. The lens simulation, you know, is like, I would say, these are baby steps. Trust me, we're going to go much deeper into it. There is an update to Lens Lab coming with the next update of FilmLab AI, where we did some more improvements. So you will see a lot, you know, happening here. But let me kind of just take you through, you know, things that there is a lot going on underneath the hub, and we've been really working hard to expose you only the limited amount of controls that you really need. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to have is basically you're going to have to enable modulation transfer function. This is one of the most important characteristics of any kind of vintage lenses, which is that they render, you know, high frequency a little bit different. You reduce some of the contrast in high frequency, and that's probably the most important aspect why people love it, because the skin just gets rendered a little bit nicer, right? So maybe I'm just going to zoom in to show you a little bit here on this particular fella. We don't want to make him look like a fashion model for sure, but I'm just going to show you, like, if I increase a little bit of modulation transfer function for his kind of face, right? Oh my god, and I forgot I'm on Zoom. Yeah. Oh god, sorry. So yeah, so you would, I would love to show you, but maybe look at the scopes right here, right? You know, like I'm gonna just open the scopes for you so you can see a little bit better. You see what the emulation transfer function does. You see how it creates like a it creates a certain level of high frequency detail loss. And these numbers are accurate numbers. This is actually 120 line per millimeters. So if you were to shoot a test chart with your camera, you would be 100% accurately be able to emulate the fall of your lenses. So what you can do is you can basically take your favorite vintage lens and you can measure the modulation transfer function fall off of that lens. Or you can even read the charts. Many manufacturers have a charts and you can adjust it here. This is actually an accurate adjustment to what really would happen with that actual lens. So you are super welcome to make most out of it. And yes, so this particular kind of detail, for some people will say like, well, I don't know, like, it's not, this is not about having strong effects, by the way. In order, for what we were doing here is we were looking what really happens with film transform, and then we were just basically trying to build tools that is going to give us as much precision as we had when we're shooting on film. So it was never about the gimmick of something looking like film. It was never about it. It was just about developing the right tools, right? So also understand that. Another aspect of lenses, which is absolutely wonderful, is the lens tint. Lens tint behaves in a really strange way. We've never, like, there are ways, very accurate ways how to measure lens tint. You have these infinite boxes, lighting boxes that are beautiful. Like, actually, I'm going to make a video just when you go to lens, repair facility, you can see how it works. They have these boxes that when you point the camera into it, you never see any edges. And then you can basically measure when you point to just a white light what really lens does and how it shifts it tonally. And it's not a linear curve at all, as you would imagine. It's a glass, right? So it's and that glass has its own properties, which are nothing to do with electronics, logarithmic and whatever linear encoding, processing does. It has its own life. And so it required a little bit more work to it than just kind of applying a warmth filter and temperature or something like that. That's not really what it does. In any case, it's beautiful. So you have a cyan, you have a magenta, you have a warm, and you have a green little filter. And these little things make kind of such a subtle difference, but change a character incredibly of the whole kind of image. It's just really interesting. Just a lens tint is already like a step towards desired outcome. Then what we have here is we have basically three types of lens distortion. One's called vintage, right? Another one's called spherical, and another one's called anamorphic. Okay, so spherical has the least amount of distortion, as you would imagine. The vintage has got the highest amount of, and actually we had the one client who particularly already asked us to match the Petzval lenses, for example, so we could tell you, oh, this is exactly when we compare the output of Petzval 58, we can give you that exactly the same output, and that combines distortion, that combines basically the loss of detail, the aberration, uh, um, um, like there is a whole set of things that happen. But what I never really wanted, I never wanted to give you a plugin that's going to give you like 100 sliders. This is just scary for me. So you are limited to kind of each one of these sliders control like at least 10 or 20 parameters in the background. So we're kind of just really trying to make this control a little bit easier for you, right? So yeah, it's, you see what it does. It kind of gives us that little kind of the element that lens really do. It loses some of the detail. And yes, there is a vignette. And like somebody said, everything has a vignette, right? And so, yes, I agree. So you should have one as well. So there is a vignette there. The vignette, you cannot escape vignette. All right. So now basically the reason why I always put the lens already at the start is because the lens really happens before the capture. So you want to do all of this conversion before you actually start doing any emulation. because yes, as I said, like, it's happening at the beginning, it's happening on a capture, the light just, goes through that glass and hits the sensor or hits the film, emulsion. So you want all of those conversions, changes, temperatures, everything to happen before it hits the actual film emulsion. So then I'm going to go and I'm going to basically build a parallel node, right? I'm going to separate it just so that you can see how it works, so that I know I could maybe not use this node. By the way, feel free to experiment with these things. I also do. I'm also a lover to experiment. This is probably the way how we build it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's the only way how you should use it. That's the beautiful thing about nodes. Nodes are there to be, explored and like experimented with and figured out and blended and whatnot, right? Don't ever be like somebody who just kind of sticks to a certain formula. I encourage you really to use your own intuition sometimes, and develop your own workflow. Give it some of your own personal touch as well. So this is another beautiful aspect of this type of film emulation, is that you're not limited to one, like a fixed structure of your emulation. You can use elements, mix and match them to your liking. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and apply halation. Now, this halation, again, has got the big advantage in comparison to any other halation, because all other halations, even if you do them manually using a node tree, or if you use the plugins, like there's lots of them out there, they all in the background, what they're doing is they're all using the linear transform again, because that's the way how they can extract really only the specular highlight. But the problem with that is, guys, that's not really what happens on film. The light on film is captured on a logarithmic scale. So if you really want to calculate the way what happens with the light with mid, you need to do this inside a logarithmic space. And that logarithmic space has to be in such a high dynamic range that can actually, preserve it, can add that highlight detail, because that's really what halation is going to do. So basically you have like two things. You have like a standard halation control, right, which is this one here. And as you can tell, this standard halation control is also not just related to the highlight. We do that kind of little kind of red thing as well that some of you like, but you don't have to do it. With this kind of gain control, you are really able to decide how much of that you want or not. Interestingly, like many cinematographers that I work with never really wanted to have that kind of red highlight kind of peaking. They don't like this. They go like, no, I ran away from film because of that. And you like, give me back. I love halation, what it does to the skin, right, and all of this, right, and but no, really, I want it to look like a badly shot film, right? So it's interesting. I was thinking, my God, we spend all this time trying to recreate this effect for you guys, Anyway, so that's the one. Leave these kind of color controls the way they are, unless you want to go a little bit crazy. And then also what I'm going to do now here is I'm just going to go and enable diffusion. This is like what many of you know as a plugin called Scatter. So, this is exactly like what Scatter does. We're just not calling it exactly those names, like a black diffusion. Maybe we should, like do it a little bit like that as well, for you to kind of be able to translate, to what Scatter was able to do and what you can do here. But I think for us, Tiffin is really the source of inspiration here. They have absolutely wonderful research on filtration, types of filtration, and really these type of filtration are three types of filtration are basically haze, bloom, and mist. So if you look at the triangle of Tiffin filters, this is what you will find. One's like a more doing more contrast, one's doing more detail, and the other one's doing contrast and detail. So basically, like I said, you have a haze, which is doing contrast, the bloom, which is doing contrast and detail, and you have a mist, which is just doing detail, no contrast. Okay, so basically, and then with those, you can then decide how much of each one of those you want. Okay, so that's basically going to be your way to figure out how to do it. Okay, all right. So the next then, what I'm going to do, and this is again another really interesting aspect on film emulsion. When a photon of light hits that film emulsion, all these effects, that I just showed you, halation, the whole bloom, everything, blah, 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 right? Happens at the same time as grain, okay? As actual grain. These things are combined. And the problem we had in the past is that we would apply grain and then we would have some sort of level of softness applied to it, and it would kill the grain. It affects the grain. And another thing that we also discovered, the grain is actually in full color. So look for what happens with my grain. Like if I go to vectorscope and I turn the grain on and off, look, there is a huge amount of saturation that this grain is adding to it. And that's really what grain looks like. The reason why we never had saturation in the grain previously was because we always captured grain against the gray background. And the gray background doesn't have a color, so we never captured the color that grain would normally capture. But you have to understand that grain is actually in color emulsions, is in cyan, magenta, and yellow photosensitive layers. And these layers have got level of saturation, of course. So basically, that's another major breakthrough that we've now able to recreate, that we were able to extract first of all grain texture that has color information in it. Another thing that also we really wanted to do, and this is totally coming from RE35 and now the 265, and basically the texture of those cameras. It's not for no reason that Ari has given you ability to turn textures in a camera, because these cameras are too clean and they need texture. And we love texture. There is a whole piece of work and research. I mean, why we need texture, right? But what's really wonderful what Ari did is that they didn't make these textures to be too prominent, right? So what we did is exactly the same thing. If you ever want your textures to be so fine in 4K, right? And I'm just going to disable printing texture. I'm going to just you enable oversampling. Okay. So what oversampling does? Let me zoom in a little bit more, even so you can do it. I'm sorry, mate, for zooming into your nose so much. So look what it does. You see how it loses the granularity of the grain. And the reason why it does that is because we take three different samples of the same frame and we blend them together. And when they blend together, then they perceptually override the Nyquist theory. And so that we basically are able to get you more detail in the same resolution. So this is really the advantage of oversampling. And that's also, by the way, what happens with ARI textures as well. They need several frames in order for them to be able to generate a grain, which is why you're never going to see plugin probably for it. But what we did is we managed to do it actually with our technology, that we can actually give you an oversampled grain. And a negative grain from a modern film stock is so fine, that if you never go to print, you would probably, unless you have a little bit underexposed to it, never see actual physically, grain particle. Like, especially if you go to a top place, top facility, it was shot by a really good cinematographer, exposed well, everything done well, you will be surprised how little grain there is in actual film negative. What we do and understand as a grain when we emulate grain is actually the print grain. That's really more the kind of the core size of the grain. And I'm going to go now and use, in my case, a medium version, right? And then what you do is like, look, by default, GrainLab is subtle. We're build a GrainLab really to replace your need to use textures inside RE35, so that you can use them in the post, you can use them in visual effects, you can decide, you can have a one level of texture for online delivery, one level of texture for streaming, another level of texture for cinema, because that's really what you have to do, right? your grain is going to look completely different on a big cinema screen. So you want to control it. If you're making a DCP, then it's going to be on a HDR, OLED screen, or if it's going to be streamed online, or even if you're going to export it as a still image. The highest level of grain is a still image. The lowest level of grain is on a cinema screen. And you want to have that control. And that's, again, a problem with Iris approach, that they bake that texture in the image already, and you can't really control it later on. Whereabout with GrainLab, you can perfectly emulate those textures that are inside Iris camera, but you can control it, the intensity. You just basically use this master control here, and you can then drive the amount of texture that you want inside your image, depending to the mastering format that you're working for. Okay, and then another beautiful thing, this softness of halation, diffusion, and the grain don't affect each other. They blend. So you're not losing grain detail. Your grain is absolutely perfectly fine, but yet you are still blending the softness that films gives. And no other plugin is doing that at the moment. I'm pretty sure they're all going to start copying us and start giving you these options very soon. But basically, that right now, nobody is really doing that. Okay. So there we go. So now I basically, created, my kind of, just a texture part, right? And I'm just going to go and disable it for you so that you can see, right, what happens. And you see, this is again what I was talking to you about, like, the fascinating discovery we made once we were able, with the help of AI, to extract any color changes from texture changes, to how much film emulation depends on texture, how much successful film emulation is. I have done nothing in terms of color here, you guys. You have to understand. I didn't apply a single LUT. I didn't apply any film emulation here. Nothing. All I'm doing is I'm just giving my eye a benefit of added texture that is present on film. And I'm not really having any problem with this image anymore, thinking, oh, it looks like ditch the camera. Oh, it's cheap. It doesn't. No, you're kidding me. I actually now work with it. Okay. And there is another real benefit of it. Look, it works real time. I know you don't want to work slow. You don't like the answer because you have to render. You told me that. I heard it 100 times. Thank you. I know. So we have a real genius on our team who knows how to accelerate these things, these shaders, and to optimize them. In HD, you're going to be absolutely fine. For 4K, you're going to need a good beefy machine. So just so you know, but Mac Mini is going to do it. Mac Mini 4 is all you need to do 4K real time. It's $600 computer is going to be today absolutely fine for the highest end 4K film emulation in real time. It's how crazy it is, right? All right. So, but yes, I'm not going to stop there. I am definitely going to go further. I want to now go a little bit more. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to basically go and apply here, post all of this. Oh, no, actually, you know what? Let me do another parallel node, because why not if I'm already like in a parallel mode? And I'm going to go and use PrintLab. And the reason why we have a PrintLab is following. Once we have 12 stops of dynamic range above mid-gray, we realized a 65-point LUT is just not enough, right? That gives us basically 5 points per stop of exposure. And like when you get like these little curves, dynamic, that's not enough. So this is 128 points, a master LUT. And we're going to open this format. It will be encrypted format. So if you ever create a LUT in this format, it's not going to be copyable unless you decide to open it. So it might help a little bit if you have invested, time and energy and your creativity into developing a very good master LUT, that not every DIT that you ever work with has got a copy of it. So it might give you a chance to preserve some of your creative intent. And we will open it at the moment. It comes only with 2 profiles. By the way, you can't use them together. You can use only one or another. They're not made to be blended and mixed together. They are made to be used only one or another. we what you want to do now is, if you still want to, this is gorgeous. I mean, look at it. Like, this is the print profiling, but because I'm putting color in parallel to texture, it just blends really well, right? So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to go back to my input node. This is normally where my IDT is going to be, and I'm not going to put anything because I'm working in Arilog C, all this path. Here is my CDL, and here is, I'm going to put the look designer, and I'm going to say, yes, I'm getting Arilog C in and Arilog C out. And I'm going to go here, and since Camilo is here, I have to do AGFA, you know. I can't wait for you guys to see Camilo's white paper. He recorded it. We're going to publish it next week, where Camilo is telling us the story of AGFA. So I'm going to put AGFA as a negative. There we go. Excellent. And this is like basically, you see, this is kind of where we are. Look, where we get. I've done zero work on primary. I've just used basically negative AGFA. I printed it on 2398. But really, what it does, it's the texture, right? This is really the magic part of the everything. This is really what what the trick is. Let's be honest, right? And then the beautiful thing about all of this is that you have then full freedom to do whatever you want with this look, right? So you're not limited just to stick with it like that. You can say, well, I don't know, let's make it a little warmer, right? If I want to, right? You can do that. You're not really limited to anything. So now I have these skin tones look really, really nice, right? I mean, you can do a lot of interesting things with it. Let me just do now and copy this to the other two shots, and just, or like, what I tend to do before I even do any other work, right? I kind of find myself like this. Yeah, this is nice. What I'm going to do is I will just basically use a little bit offset, and then sometimes that's all I need. I just need to get a little bit exposure in place. I don't need to reinvent these shots, right? I just, kind of go like, well, like if I have a good post-processing pipeline, right? And then I'm just going to do a little bit temperature here, right? I want to just get it to be a little bit like this. So now they're matching, right? All right, cool. So basically, I didn't do a very good job, actually. Now it's better. I need to get a little bit shadow here as well into teal. Uh, there we go. All right. So basically, this is my kind of workflow that this guy. Well, if I'm gonna go a little bit cooler on that, why don't I cool this guy a little bit into teal as well? Yeah, like this. If I'm already going into that direction. Yeah, like this. So that I have like some sort of consistency between these three shots. Even though I don't think they come actually from a same camera, by the way. They're not, but we can match them. It's not an issue. So this one's just gonna need to be a little bit like more like this. There we go. And open it up. There. Now it works. So yeah, so that is the magic of quality tools, And I don't really want to be like a party pooper here and show you like, hey, this is what you used to do with this plugin or this plugin. That's not really what I'm here for. I'm really here to open your mind to idea that actually, that 1% philosophy that, as long as every part of your processing pipeline is 1% better, the overall image gets, better. And if you apply this philosophy to your image processing pipeline, you are certainly, going to, not just you, but your clients, and most importantly, the viewers, people who actually are going to watch this content, are going to see your 1%, are going to see that little improvement that you have, that little extra touch, that little extra care that you have put in every step of the way. So you didn't just use any grain, you didn't just use any halation, you didn't just use any color space, you didn't just use any fill. You are really like basically carefully, looking after every step of your image production chain, and that's how you get high performance. That's how you get that high quality image. There is not one magic solution. It's lots of little things coming together and giving you that beautiful result at the end. Okay. So now let me open to questions. Let me see. Urset has 3 questions. Go ahead, Urset. You have 3 already. Go ahead, please. You can unmute your microphone if you want.
Right. Thank you.
No
So
problem.
my first question is that if JPlog2 is the gamma that's being used, what
Mhm.
is the color space that these are working in?
Excellent, very good question. It's AP0. Sorry, AP1.
P1.
So it's the same color space that's used in ACCCT. And
Okay.
this is not the critical part of film emulation because a film does not really have a very wide gamut. Doesn't really go. It's these gamuts that we see in digital camera, they're very arbitrary anyway. You have to understand. These cameras don't really capture those colors. They don't really exist. So you have to understand the grading color space for me was a choice that it's actually within a visible boundary that we basically can see. It never gives me any negative values, which is very important, right? And it's not an issue. We never have a problem that we don't have enough gamut. In opposite, we have too much sometimes. Sometimes we have these negative values that we have to fight with. So which is why I didn't use Alexa white gamut, because Alexa white gamut has this little point at the bottom which goes negative. So it's AP1.
Okay, thanks. My second question is that this entire process is very fascinating, that it goes through lens first and then halo, grain, and emulation happens at the same time. But
Yes.
then why does print come in the process and not negative there? Because in the camera, there would be a negative film that would be exposed and then it would be printed
I
later
agree,
on.
I agree with you, but the problem we have is that if I put a grain at the front, then anything that I put afterwards, any halation and everything, it kills that grain.
Oh, my point is that, okay, halo, grain, and instead of the print lab, why
Uh-huh.
don't we put a look designer with a negative film stock? Because that's what it
Ah,
gets there
no,
first.
you don't even need to do that. You can, if you want a negative stock, you go for Vision 3 500T. So that's
Okay.
a negative stock. So I could just use this one
Okay,
if you
perfect.
want. Okay. Now look designer internally is still Arilog C. Okay. It will become look designer 4 will be JPlog 2. Okay. But right now it's not. So I don't know if I will ever be able to make look designer on the level of precision that I get with the print lab. I don't ever know if this is going to be the same product. I don't think it's possible because those film profiles in look designer, I cannot sample again. You see, I can go and resample Vision 3 and 2398 because this stock exists today, and I can go and recreate 128 point LUT. I can do that today because this technology is available to me right now. But I can't go back in time, and those profiles that are in Look Designer, I collected over a period of 10 years from different facilities, places, laboratories, and they closed. They don't exist. So unless we find a way how to digitally remaster them to higher precision, we're never going to be able to get the same functionality of that same high resolution, like a emulation, like we get in the print lab. Okay. So that's the limitation. That's the limitation.
Okay. And my third question was that, is there a difference? Sorry if I missed
No, no,
when
no.
you were explaining that from O node, from JPlog to Rec 709, or from JPlog to RE and then putting a LUT. Is there a difference in the process or
Not really, but like for example, I yesterday I did a class in New York. By the way, we started doing classroom training again. So, I had a class and I had a colorist who tells me, well, Dado, I always have to work in ACES, for example. It's just a client, wants him to work in ACES. So what I told him to do is to tell him, okay, you on the I node, you're going to go and put ACES. On the O node, you're going to put aces, and then you're going to have an aces transform at the end, and it's going to be exactly the same. And the reason why I kind of thought when I was demonstrating this, just to kind of maybe get all of you to benefit from that approach, that you can do this. There is zero difference between me doing this or just selecting here on here SDR RLuxy. There is zero difference. There is no difference in output. The reason why I did it is just to make you aware of that possibility, because I don't think I have ever shown that before.
Okay. And last one
Yeah,
is
go.
that I am on Windows system right now with NVIDIA graphics card, but it still runs slow with GrainLab and all the plugins.
What is?
I want to shift to a Mac system now. Is M4 Pro Mac Mini enough, or should I go for Macs?
No, don't. Even just the standard one is fine.
Okay, perfect.
Even
Thanks.
just the standard one is fine. It's insane. Honestly, it's insane. We run 10 concurrent matches of FilmLab AI on a single Mac Mini. So it's really different. This computer is something else. The problem you have with NVIDIA is that there is no multi-threading. It's very difficult in NVIDIA to spin up multiple instances unless you have multiple GPUs. You understand? Because NVIDIA's architecture is not built for me to run like a more than one instance at the same time. I kind of have to compile all of the shaders and run them all in one go, right? And there is a lot of copying we have to do on NVIDIA cards from, memory to card, because NVIDIA memory is limited, right?
Right.
On Mac M4, the memory is shared between the GPU and your RAM. So there is no copying. You basically instruct it to use the same memory buffer. So on an NVIDIA, I have to tell it, oh, copy this memory from, CPU to the GPU memory. You have to basically constantly move frames, down, and that slows it down a little bit, because imagine like you constantly have to move, textures from one memory to another. On Mac, you just basically change the address. That's it. The second thing as well, the Mac has allows you to multi-thread a little bit. So basically, you can say, okay, I run in this part of the processor, I run this on this part processor, I run this. So they don't interfere with one another. They run in parallel. So it's just like a different level of how the computer has been made. Do you understand? This is such a smarter way of building computer. And the biggest thing as well is you'll see is like, this little Mac Mini, you don't even hear, you don't even know it's turned on. You know, I have a massive NVIDIA, computer here. I wouldn't be able to do this live streaming with that computer on. I mean, I would, but it would sound like there's a helicopter taking off in the background. So it's gonna change your life. I have me tell you this. You're really gonna find it really interesting what it does.
All right. Thank you, Dado, so much. See you in LA. Yeah.
See you in LA. I see you then. So there says, why did you apply log C3 in look designer node? It shouldn't be JP log. No, it's not, because I'm applying it here. This is log C footage. So I didn't apply any IDT because I want to stay. And then because I'm here all the way log C, I applied log C to log C. And then I'm only going out of log C here on the I node. And I always do it like this because any material, the only exception for me is when I'm working with Alexa log C4 or new 265. These are the only two cameras where I would put inode at the beginning. Otherwise, my inodes are sitting in the post-processing path on the time. So question, I have a project where I used Color Pro pipeline that I'll need to hand for archiving. I'd love to export print node and look design LUT to replace the plugin before I hand over the project. Is it possible? It is going to be possible, but not with this version that we have right now. I really hope that we're going to push out an update for FilmLab AI, which I think is going to be 3.1 or 3.2, which is adding to iNode and PrintLab option to export a LUT. So that's going to be a major add-on to this, and then we're approving LensLab a little bit as well, and we're fixing issues that some Windows users had with GrainLab. There is a particular type of NVIDIA driver that was causing memory issues, memory leaks. We have a fix for that, by the way. If you ever have any of those problems, let us know. We have a fix for that. But then basically, as I said, we are releasing with the functionality to export LUTs as well. So yeah, so that's coming. I mean, like literally, like it shouldn't take us more than a few days to do it. Yeah. So if you can wait a little bit, then do it. Otherwise, contact me offline. There is a way how we can convert it for you. I can, if necessary, find you those, like if it's something that you need to do straight away, I'll help you. But if you can wait a few days, I'm sure you're gonna benefit from it. No problem, Maurice. Thank you, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was useful. So on that note, have a wonderful weekend, everybody. I hope you earned it yourself. You worked hard, but you achieved a lot, and you feel good about the week in the past, and enjoy a few days before we kick off, the 1 week more. I think 1 or 2 weeks, and then we're going to break for Christmas. I think everybody. So yeah, take care, everyone. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, and bye-bye.